all Malaysians in South Sudan reported safe. Israel issues last warning to Gazans amid renewed ground operations. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Renee Fong and you are watching World Today. The High Commission of Malaysia in Nairobi, Kenya has confirmed that all 55 Malaysian civilians and 18 Royal Malaysia Police PDRM officers serving under the United Nations Police UN-POL mission in South Sudan are safe. And according to a statement by the Foreign Ministry today, the High Commission remains in close communication with UN-POL to ensure the continued safety and well-being of the PDRM personnel. Considering the worsening situation in South Sudan and as a precautionary measure, the ministry advises all Malaysians living in South Sudan to remain vigilant and give their utmost attention to their safety and security. They may also consider relocating to safer places or voluntarily returning to Malaysia should they feel their safety and security are at risk. The Foreign Ministry also strongly advises Malaysians to defer travel to the country until further notice. Malaysians in South Sudan are encouraged to register with the High Commission of Malaysia in Nairobi to receive timely updates and assistance. Israel has announced renewed ground operations in Gaza and issued what is called a last warning to residents of the Palestinian territory to return hostages and remove Hamas from power. Israeli forces this week conducted the deadliest wave of airstrikes since the start of a truce in January, killing hundreds of people. The military said it had begun targeted ground operations in the central and southern Gaza Strip to expand the security perimeter and create a partial buffer between the north and the south. As Israel kept up its renewed bombardment despite a chorus of calls from foreign governments to preserve the ceasefire, long lines of fleeing civilians filled the roads of Gaza. Families with young children fled northern Gaza for areas further south, fearing for their lives after Israel urged civilians to leave areas it described as combat zones. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said the Gaza residents should return to the hostages and remove Hamas. So then other options will open up for them, including the possibility of leaving for other places in the world. So far, Hamas has not responded militarily to the strikes, and an official from the group said it was open to talks on getting the ceasefire back on track. On a related note, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is shocked by the death of a UN worker in a strike on a building in Gaza and demands a full inquiry. Israel has denied responsibility for the attack, which also injured 5 others. Spokesman Farhan Haq said Guterres was deeply saddened to learn of the death of a United Nations Office for Project Services staff member when 2 UN guest houses in Deir el-Balah were hit in strikes. He added the attack brings the number of UN employees killed in Gaza since 7th October 2023 to at least 280. The death took place amid a renewed Israeli offensive in Gaza, which has killed more than 400 people in 2 days. Haag also said one of the 5 injured employees is in a very critical condition. He noted that the locations of all UN premises are known to the parties to the conflict, who are bound by international law to protect them and maintain their absolute inviolability. He said it was too early to determine responsibility, but the explosion was not the result of a mine or unexploded ordnance, but a projectile that was either dropped or fired at the infrastructure and detonated inside the building. Head of the UN Office for Project Services, Jorge Moreira de Silva, said this was not an accident, adding that attacks against humanitarian premises are a breach of international law. Meanwhile, the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, ICJP, has launched Global 195, an international initiative to hold Israel accountable for war crimes in Gaza. The initiative aims to enable the prosecution of war crimes suspects worldwide through independent legal groups. ICJP Director Tayyab Ali said the ICJP had been collecting evidence of war crimes in Gaza for the past 18 months, compiling a substantial amount of material in line with British criminal legal standards. He emphasized that this evidence establishes a clear narrative of war crimes committed by Israel, prompting the launch of Global 195. Ali explained that the initiative's goal is to set up independent legal groups in every country. The initiative will enable legal groups to use the collected evidence to file complaints with local law enforcement agencies. In cases where authorities fail to investigate or prosecute, these groups will seek private arrest warrants and initiate private prosecutions against individuals accused of war crimes. However, Ali acknowledged that certain governments may continue to shield war crime suspects. US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky have agreed to work together to end Russia's war with Ukraine in what the White House described as a fantastic one-hour phone call. In their first conversation since an Oval Office shouting match in February, Zelensky thanked Trump for US support, and the two leaders agreed that technical teams would meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days. Zelensky asked Trump for more air defense support to protect his country against Russian attacks, and the US president said he would help locate the necessary military equipment in Europe. Trump briefed Zelensky on his phone call with Vladimir Putin, in which the Russian president rejected a proposed full 30-day ceasefire sought by Trump, but agreed to pause attacks on energy infrastructure. Trump also suggested to Zelensky the US could help run and possibly own Ukraine's nuclear power plants. Zelensky, describing his conversation with Trump as positive, very substantive and frank, said he had confirmed Kiev's readiness to halt strikes on Russian infrastructure and to accept an unconditional frontline ceasefire as the US proposed earlier. The Ukrainian president also said he had not felt any pressure from Trump to make concessions to Russia. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine conducted a prisoner exchange, with each releasing 175 military personnel. Russia's defense ministry announced that 175 Russian soldiers had been returned from Ukrainian-controlled territory following negotiations. Additionally, Moscow handed over 175 Ukrainian prisoners of war, along with 22 severely wounded Ukrainian soldiers. The ministry said the Russian servicemen were in Belarus receiving medical and psychological assistance before being transported to Russia for further treatment and rehabilitation. Ukraine's defense minister Rustem Umerov confirmed the return of 175 Ukrainian troops, as well as 22 additional defenders, including severely wounded soldiers and 3 servicemen allegedly prosecuted by Russian authorities on fabricated charges. Umerov expressed his gratitude to President Zelensky for his commitment to securing prisoner releases, as well as to the United Arab Emirates for its role in facilitating the exchange. The UAE has played a mediating role in previous Russia-Ukraine prisoner exchanges, leveraging its diplomatic ties with both countries to facilitate humanitarian negotiations. Still ahead, at least 10 killed in Nigeria highway fire. A fiery highway pile-up involving a truck carrying natural gas killed at least 10 people in Nigeria, with an explosion ripping through the wreckage. The crash was the latest deadly incident involving fuel trucks in the West African nation, where a spate of tanker accidents sparked recent reforms on vehicles carrying liquid petrol. Spokesman for the National Emergency Management Agency, Nonso Ezekiel, said the rescue operation was complicated by the resulting traffic jam, with the highway shut down in both directions. He explained that a truck carrying compressed natural gas lost control and ran into many cars before the tank exploded. He added the fire from the main truck spread to other vehicles that were on the road. The EU will reduce steel imports by a further 15% from April to prevent a wave of cheap steel flooding the market after the United States imposed new levies. US President Donald Trump slapped 25% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminium, raising fears of the knock-on effects for Europe's beleaguered steel industry, already facing fierce competition from Asia and high energy prices. As he unveiled a medley of measures to protect the metal sector, European Commission Vice President Stefan Sejourné said on 1st April the EU will reinforce the current safeguard clause, aiming for a drop of up to 15% in imports. The Commission already has safeguard measures, including import limits, in place to protect the steel industry that will continue until 2026. Sejourné said Brussels will also launch an investigation into aluminium on the European market with a view to introducing a safeguard clause similar to that for steel. The probe would look at whether there has been a sudden increase in aluminium imports, which could lead to import curbs. The Commission said US tariffs on aluminium are likely to worsen the situation further, given the significant threat of trade diversion from multiple destinations. US President Donald Trump is expected to sign an order today aiming to dismantle the Department of Education, fulfilling a long-held goal of American conservatives. Trump promised to decentralize education as he campaigned for a return to the White House, saying he would devolve the department's powers to state governments as desired for decades by many Republicans. Traditionally, the federal government has had a limited role in education in the United States, with only about 13% of funding for primary and secondary schools coming from federal coffers, the rest being funded by states and local communities. But federal funding is invaluable for low-income schools and students with special needs, and the federal government has been essential in enforcing key civil rights protections for students. The order directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the department's closure. Several key programs are to be spared, such as those providing grants to university students and funding for low-income schools across the country. Turkish police have detained Istanbul's powerful mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu over graft and terrorism allegations, prompting outrage from the opposition, which slammed it as a politically motivated coup. İmamoğlu, of the main opposition CHP's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main political rival, and his detention came just days before the party was expected to name him as its candidate for the 2028 presidential election. Justice Minister Yilmaz Tunç said İmamoğlu was being investigated for the alleged crime of aiding and abetting a terrorist organization, namely the banned Kurdish group PKK. More than 80 people were rounded up, with some 20 others still sought, most from the CHP. Meanwhile, street protests erupted despite a heavy police presence on the streets, with hundreds of officers fanning out around City Hall and closing off the central Taksim Square. Hundreds also massed earlier outside the police station where the mayor was being held. The governor banned all protests for 4 days. Argentina's Congress has given President Javier Milei the green light to negotiate a new International Monetary Fund (IMF) loan agreement. On top of the $44 billion Buenos Aires already owes the lender. Milei asked lawmakers on 11th March to approve a new 10-year loan to boost the central bank's foreign currency reserves and cover looming debt payments. The amount of the prospective loan to South America's second biggest economy, which has been bailed out by the International Monetary Fund 22 times despite several debt defaults, has not yet been disclosed. Under a 2021 law, Argentina's president must seek authorization from both houses of Congress to take money from the IMF, but only needs support from one to proceed. With 129 votes in favor, 208 against, and 6 abstentions in the Chamber of Deputies, which is the lower house, Milei now has a free hand to finalize the agreement. Milei said the new IMF loan will allow the government to pay off its debts to the central bank and help exterminate inflation, the country's eternal bugbear. Argentina has one of the highest inflation rates in the world. A jury in North Dakota has ordered Greenpeace to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in damages in a closely watched lawsuit brought by a U.S. pipeline operator, raising serious free speech concerns. The verdict delivers a stunning legal blow to the environmental advocacy group, which Energy Transfer accused of orchestrating violence and defamation during the controversial construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline nearly a decade ago. The jury awarded more than $660 million in damages across 3 Greenpeace entities, citing charges including trespass, nuisance, conspiracy, and deprivation of property access. Greenpeace vowed to appeal the verdict and continue its environmental advocacy. At the heart of the North Dakota case was the Dakota Access Pipeline, where from 2016 to 2017, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe led one of the largest anti-fossil fuel protests in U.S. history. The demonstration saw hundreds arrested and injured, drawing the attention of the United Nations, which raised concerns over potential violations of indigenous sovereignty. Despite the protests, the pipeline, designed to transport fracked crude oil to refineries and onto global markets, became operational in 2017. Record greenhouse gas levels helped bring temperatures to an all-time high last year, accelerating glacier and sea ice loss, raising sea levels and edging the world closer to a key warming threshold. The World Meteorological Organization (WMO) said annual average mean temperatures stood at 1.55 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels last year, surpassing the previous 2023 record by 0.1 degrees Celsius. Countries agreed in the 2015 Paris Agreement to strive to limit temperature increases to within 1.5 degrees Celsius above the 1850 to 1900 average. The WMO said preliminary estimates put the current long-term average increase at between 1.34 to 1.41 degrees Celsius, closing in on but not yet exceeding the Paris threshold. The WMO report said other factors could also have driven global temperatures rises last year, including changes in the solar cycle, a massive volcanic eruption, and a decrease in cooling aerosols. While a small number of regions saw temperatures fall, extreme weather wreaked havoc across the globe, with droughts causing food shortages and floods and wildfires forcing the displacement of 800,000 people. Ocean heat also reached its highest on record, and the rate of warming is accelerating, with rising ocean carbon dioxide concentrations also driving up acidification levels. Next up in sports, Kyrgios earns first win in more than 2 years. We begin with tennis. Australian Nick Kyrgios came from behind to defeat Mackenzie McDonald 3-6, 6-3 and 6-4 in the first round of the Miami Open to earn his first win since October 2022. Kyrgios, who had lost all 3 matches he played this year, got off to a slow start on a hot and humid day in South Florida, but after dropping the first set, he began to settle in, finding his rhythm on serve to level the contest. In the decider, he hit a well-disguised drop shot to set up a break point and converted when his American opponent double-faulted two-hand Kyrgios a 4-3 lead. From there, he rode his best shot, his booming serve, to the finish line. Kyrgios, who retired from his first round match at Indian Wells this month due to pain in his surgically repaired right wrist, soaked in the moment, looking skyward and taking a deep breath after sealing the win. Next up for Kyrgios is Russian Karen Khachanov, who stunned the Australian in a hard-fought quarterfinal at the 2022 US Open, a tournament Kyrgios was among the favourites to win that year. Kalle Rovanperä of Finland clocked the fastest time as the FIA World Rally Championship roared back into action in the Safari Rally Kenya Shakedown. After a challenging start to the season, failing to crack the top 5 in the first 2 rounds, the 2-time world champion signaled a potential return to form on the World Rally Championship's first gravel test of the year in his Toyota Gazoo racing car. With 2 Safari victories already to his name, the Finn wasted no time on Africa's punishing terrain. Rovanperä's opening run through the rough and rocky 5.16 kilometer warm-up stage put his Toyota on top, clocking 1.6 seconds quicker than world champion Belgian Thierry Neuville's Hyundai, who improved on his final pass to snatch second. Ott Tanak of Estonia, also in a Hyundai, completed the top 3, 1.9 seconds off the benchmark. Toyota's Takamoto Katsuka of Japan slotted into 4th, 3.5 seconds adrift of his teammate. Adrien Fourmeau rounded out the top 5, while World Championship leader Elfyn Evans of Wales, also in a Toyota, was 7th fastest. The rally begins today with 2 special stages, with 19 more to follow before the conclusion on Sunday. The Scottish city of Edinburgh will host the Tour de France Grand Depart in 2027 as the world's most famous cycling race returns to Britain for the 5th time. It will be the 3rd time the race has started in Britain after London in 2007 and Leeds in 2014. Organisers also confirmed that the Tour de France films will also come to Britain in 2027, the first time both races have held stages in the same country outside of France. Further details on routes will be announced in the autumn season, but the prospect of a stage on the cobblestones of Edinburgh's Royal Mile is a mouth-watering one. Organisers also confirmed that the tour's first 3 stages will be in Scotland, England and Wales. The tour first came to Britain in 1974 when Plymouth hosted a stage, and it returned 20 years later in Dover to celebrate the opening of the Channel Tunnel. London staged the Grand Depart in 2007, and in 2014, massive crowds perched on the Yorkshire Hills at the race began in brutal and spectacular fashion. Last year's Tour Grand Depart took place in Florence, Italy, with the 2026 race scheduled to start in Spain in Barcelona. Kylian Mbappé said he was delighted to be reunited with his France teammates as he prepares to win his first international cap in 6 months against Croatia in the Nations League quarterfinals. The 26-year-old missed 2 matches in October due to injury and another 2 in November when coach Didier Deschamps opted to rest him during a difficult period for the player as he adapted to life at new club Real Madrid. But ahead of tomorrow morning's first leg clash in Croatia, Mbappe said he was delighted to be back with the group.
Ça va être important de revenir, de bien jouer, de gagner des matchs, de marquer des buts. C'est un match important demain, donc ça va être l'objectif d'aider l'équipe, mais c'est pas quelque chose qui me préoccupe. Ce qui me préoccupe, c'est de gagner cette confrontation contre la Croatie et d'aller au top 4.
The 2018 World Cup winner made a long-expected move to Real Madrid last summer, but his own admission had difficulties finding his top form for the reigning Spanish and European champions. France take on Croatia in Split tomorrow morning before hosting the return fixture in 3 days' time at the Stade de France in Paris. In another development, Belgium goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois trained with his international teammates following his return to the side after an almost 2-year absence. Courtois has not played for the team since June 2023 when he walked out ahead of a European Championship qualifier in Estonia. But after a change of coach, he is back in the fold for this week's UEFA Nations League playoffs against Ukraine. The 32-year-old Real Madrid goalkeeper, who has 102 caps, said his walkout had nothing to do with being denied the captaincy, as had been reported at the time, but rather a breakdown in his relationship with coach Domenico Tedesco, who has since been replaced by Rudy Garcia. Belgium take on Ukraine in the first leg of their Nations League quarterfinal in Spain tomorrow morning. Outgoing International Olympic Committee IOC President Thomas Bach was named honorary president for life, with the German due to step down in June after 12 years in charge. The proposal was passed by acclamation, with Bach earning a standing ovation from the IOC members at their session in southern Greece. Bach took over in 2013 and immediately introduced wide-ranging reforms, both in relation to the Olympic Games and the IOC itself, including reducing the size and cost of the Games to make them more attractive to future host cities. His tenure as president was at times rocky, as he had to deal with political tensions on the Korean Peninsula prior to the 2018 Winter Games in South Korea's Pyeongchang, and was also forced to postpone the Tokyo 2020 Olympics by a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Bach will step down from his post on 23rd June and will also vacate his IOC membership post. There are 7 candidates to succeed Bach, with IOC Vice President Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr., Zimbabwe Sports Minister Kirsty Coventry, and World Athletics President Sebastian Coe of Britain seen as the front runners. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, all Malaysians in South Sudan reported to be safe. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Renee Fong. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching and have a pleasant afternoon.
Tersesat jalan di lembah nak berduri, terkurung dalam sangkar dosa nan noda yang menjijikan, liku yang